Next February, Chip and Tina's in New Orleans. Dan interviews Dan Le Batard, and myself. Information on tickets can be found danpatrick.com and across our social media platforms. He's the commissioner of the NBA for the last 11 years, Adam Silver, joining us on the program. Hi, Commissioner. How are you?
I'm good, Dan. I need some more stuff on my desk.
What happened?
It's clean. I like all the stuff you got there, though.
Well, you got some pull with teams. Why don't you just have a little tchotchkes there? You get bobblehead dolls up there?
I've got them. I put paper on my desk. We have different jobs.
What is the coolest thing in your office?
I have one of Shaq's shoes that looks like a snow boot. And you could use it as a planner.
Well, I have one too, his Reebok shoe.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was the brand that he created after I think it was like Dunkman, I think was the brand.
Okay.
And it's enormous. It doesn't look real.
Well, he only gave me one. I don't know why he only gives out one shoe.
He gave me the other. I only have one. You have the left or the right?
I think I have the left one, but I
got the right. He split the pair between us.
I got Tim Duncan shoes from when they won the NBA title against the Knicks. And he said, I'll give you my shoes if you tell me who's the number one Sports Century athlete. They just win the NBA championship. He comes in, I'm doing Sports Center. He's got his shoes, and he writes to DP, Tim Duncan. And then he said, all right, who's number one on the list? And I nobody knew because we had that countdown. I said, it's Jordan. And he said, all right, here's your shoes. So I got Tim Duncan's shoes after the NBA Finals. Did you get any Jordan stuff when you were with, Commissioner Stern?
No, I mean, only because it wouldn't have been appropriate. I mean, I guess I was around a lot of Jordan stuff, but I wasn't a collector. I don't think it would be appropriate.
Well, when you weren't the commissioner, you could have said, hey, it'd be nice to get a pair of Mike's shoes.
Yeah. I bought a lot of Jordan shoes over the years.
Yeah. well, I talked to, who is it? Tim, who's the Tim, the Bulls.
My Tim?
No, Tim, who was the Bulls PR guy. Tim Hallam.
Yeah, Tim Hallam.
He would get Jordan shoes after every NBA Finals, every title. Mike would take off the shoes and autograph them and hand them to him after every one. I don't know if he sold those things, but those things got to be worth, because they're championship-worn NBA shoes by Mike, they got to be worth a whole lot of money.
But think about the business Mike created as a division of Nike, the Jordan brand. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar business at this point. I mean, think about how many athletes have retained that kind of notoriety, this many decades post-playing career. And he's an amazing guy, obviously, and still a small owner in the league in Charlotte. But post his playing career, I mean, I knew him a bit over the years, but, post-playing career, we got to be really close. And he was obviously one of my bosses for the first several years I was the commissioner, and still amazing person.
Give me the list here. What's top on your list here of what needs to be addressed with the NBA?
I think top on my list is the transition we're going through in media now. I mean, we locked in our new media deals for essentially the next decade, staying with Disney, ABC, and ESPN, moving to Comcast, Universal, Peacock, in addition to being on NBC, and now Amazon. But I think more interesting in a way is not just moving from one partner to another, but the shift in live sports to streaming. And I think where, as most fans see it now, and maybe even a little bit of a pain that they got to switch off their box or whatever else and then find the app, or however they have to do it from a programming standpoint, it's still they're finding what in essence looks like the same game. It's just streamed other than being on broadcast or conventional cable. What's really fascinating to me is all the functionality that sort of internet TV will allow through streaming, all the personalization, the customization that will come, all the new types of information you can present to fans as they're watching games, all that optionality. When we first met, I was at NBA Entertainment and sort of began my career on the production side. And I think it's at this moment we can redefine how we present the game to fans and also make it a lot more convenient. In our new deals, every game will be streamed. And we have a very young audience. They're watching more screen time than ever before, but not traditional television. And I think our ability to bring those games directly to them and in ways they want to consume them. I'll add to that as well. I think using social media to engage fans, not just to interest them. Example I talked about recently, Victor Wembanyama was in New York on Christmas Day and then was around for 2 more days because then he played in Brooklyn 2 days later. And he's a chess player. And he went to Washington Square Park. I'm sure you saw that clip.
Yeah.
Something like 100 million people, a week saw video of him playing chess in Washington Square Park. And our viewership, which is fine, pales though in comparison to the social media following of these players and the league. That number, on a global basis is over 2 billion. And I think sort of my job is to get more basketball lovers to watch the NBA and watch it longer. And I think there's an opportunity to use social media to create more engagement, and not just to show how multifaceted Wemby is and he loves to play chess, but to teach people about the game, to celebrate the game, to demonstrate why. I know you're a college basketball player. I know you love the game, like why this is such an incredible game, and help people better understand what they're watching, understand the finer points of the game, and fair to be critical of it at times too. And should there be less three-point shooting, et cetera? That's something we're very focused on. But when I, day in and day out, and I have all the various streaming services and have all different programming available to me, I don't think it's an accident that people are increasingly gravitating towards premium live sports, not just basketball, but obviously football, hockey, baseball, et cetera. WNBA now. I think because people crave something that's live, something that's unscripted, something that can be entertaining as well. And I think the basketball and the NBA can be all those things. But our job has become that much harder because we're competing against so many different forms of entertainment. It's podcasts and social media and unlimited numbers of channels and programming. And so we have to up our game too, to make sure that we're finding ways to engage viewers. And again, to teach people about the game. And that's been one of my frustrations. I think that, and I don't blame the broadcasters, and it's hard. You broadcast a lot of basketball, that the game's moving so quickly, you don't have the space that you might have in football or in baseball to be talking more about what's unfolding before you.
But what bothers you more, the ratings or the coverage of the ratings?
The ratings are fine. We're roughly even with last season for the regular season, which was the highest ratings for a regular season in 4 years. I get it, there was a narrative early in the season. We were down a bit. You've been covering the league for a long time. It seems that there's always a narrative around our sport. Too physical, too much isolation, scoring too low, super teams, player empowerment. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
And then the narrative early in the season became the ratings are down because of three-point shooting. I think those are two independent issues. The ratings are now about even with last year. And as I said, if you look more broadly at other measures of engagement, our attendance last season was the highest in the history of the league. You can't look at social media over too long a spectrum because it didn't exist. But when you add in social media, the game has never been more popular in terms of the engagement. So do I get frustrated around the narrative around ratings? Yeah, especially when, because of the decline in traditional television, the decline in cable homes, everyone's down a bit. So, plus we entered into our new deals for the next decade. So I feel good about that. But I think those narratives become a reality to the extent, especially even when we're doing well, it's still only a relatively small percentage of the population that's watching live games. So there's a lot of people out there who may not be fans of the NBA and become consumed with that story. And again, NBA seems to take a disproportionate amount of that discussion. I think maybe because we're so relevant from a societal standpoint, our players have been outspoken. There's been a history of activism, in certain cases in this league. For whatever those reasons, I think at the end of the day, my job is to find more people who are inclined to want to watch live sports, to want to watch basketball, and convert them into NBA fans.
All right, let me.
So I don't want to lose sight of that.
Let me do rapid fire because there's a few topics here. The NIL ruling has made college basketball more of an attractive path for athletes in recent years. I don't know if that changes allowing players out of high school, that you will revisit that. But what is the NCAA a friend or a foe to the NBA?
NCAA is a great friend. In fact, Charlie Baker, who's the former governor of Massachusetts, I've gotten to know well over the last couple of years. We're talking about more that we can do together. I mean, you remember in the not so old days, if we touched a amateur, high school player, we could cause them to lose their eligibility. Now, of course, through collectives and NIL, they're paid. And what we've been talking to the NCAA about is we should jointly get more involved in youth basketball, particularly the training of elite players. The vast majority of them will never make it to the NBA, but will play in college. And so we have a joint interest, not in developing elite players, and then for the broader base of players, we have a joint interest in, for young boys and of course young girls, getting them to be more active. Basketball is a great sport to do that. Getting them, again, to love the game. Charlie Baker himself was a college player. So we're working together. I think specifically on NIL and collectives, I think there's work to be done in college basketball because just like in the NBA, where over successive collective bargaining agreements, we've helped to level the playing field in terms of competition. We've had 6 different teams win championships over the last 6 years. At the end of the day, we're selling competition. And I think college has to work through some issues where now, as players in essence through the portal can become essentially free agents every year, that there's no real salary structure. So you have a lot of real, out of whack balance in terms of teams' ability to compete. And I think for fans of the college game, and I'm one of them, at the end of the day, you want to see great competition in Division I as well.
But will you revisit, like the G League, you got players who are just going to the G League. If you allowed them to come out of high school to the NBA, they wouldn't be going to the G League, I would imagine. Correct?
Well, yes, but in fact, back before those court rulings, which allowed the collectives and NIL, at the urging of Condoleezza Rice, who oversaw a commission with the NCAA, and President Obama to a certain extent, we were asked to create a professional track because the view was it was unfair to so-called force these young men to go to college for a year before they came into the NBA. So we weren't ready to return to 18 as the minimum age in the NBA. We stayed at 19. But through the G League, we created something called Team Ignite, where we were paying players several $100,000s a year on a pro track and then could come into the NBA. That seems like a pittance now based on what players are able to earn in Division I through these college programs. And frankly, I think the track through these great college programs is better than what we were offering them in the G League because they have first-class training facilities, some of the greatest coaches out there, planes, et cetera. That didn't make sense in our economic model and still doesn't for the G League. So I'm perfectly fine with them going to college. And by the way, what you've also seen with NIL and collective money is there's a big pool of international players who would have stayed largely in Europe and played, but are now coming to play Division I basketball because it's a better economic situation for them. And ultimately, probably better development too if their goal is to get into the NBA.
All right, give me the wildest thing that you guys have considered. I'm sure there's always, we're going to try this. The NFL doing the kickoff the way they did It's pretty crazy that that's what it looks like. Give me this has been discussed.
I mean, one that's only been discussed a little, I wouldn't put it necessarily in the category of being so wild, is potentially 2 free throws for a foul and a 3-point shot. I don't necessarily think I would do it in the last 2 minutes of the game, but I think that's something interesting. Something else that I'm a fan of, and I'm probably in a minority, as we get more involved in global basketball, the NBA is the only league that plays 48 minutes. And I am a fan of 4 10-minute quarters. I'm not sure that many others are. I mean, putting aside what it means for records and things like that, I think that a 2-hour format for a game is more consistent with sort of modern television habits. I don't think people in arenas aren't asking us to shorten the game, but I think as a television program, being 2 hours, that's Olympic basketball, is 2 hours. College basketball, of course, is
but
is
if
40
you like it, I'd say it has kind of a little bit of a push there.
Yeah, but it's such a dramatic change to the game. I mean, I think something like that would have to be talked more about over time. I mean, incidentally,
But the pitch clock was dramatic, Commissioner.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I'm a fan of what baseball did. I'm a baseball fan, and I think some of those changes have really increased sort of the engagement, the entertainment value of the game, and so I'm paying a lot of attention to that. And in fact, I've used the pitch clock, the sort of the increasing the size of the base, et cetera, in meetings at the NBA to say, if baseball, which is more locked into tradition, and I don't mean that negatively, than any other sport, and part of what baseball provides is the tradition, the legacy, that if they're able to make those changes, certainly we shouldn't be afraid to look at changes as well. So, I also think, though, we have made a series of changes over the years. They haven't been as dramatic in many cases. We've changed the format in the last 2 minutes of the game so we wouldn't have as many stoppages. We have a coach's challenge now. We had the hack-a-shack issue. We changed the rule there. I mean, we added the cup, which we now have. We have a play-in tournament. I mean, so we've made significant changes over the years.
I have an idea before I let you go. How about we take away the 3-point line during the in-season tournament?
Interesting. I mean, it's like the issue there.
Wait, that wasn't interesting.
Well, because I'm not. I like the 3-point shot. I mean, let me take a step back. I mean, if you think from when you first started covering the NBA to the skill level of big men now. Yep. I mean, look at Victor Wembanyama. Look at Giannis. Look at Jokic. Look what these guys can do. It was like the fact that they are so skillful that they can shoot from these kinds of distances, shoot in the way guards used to be able to. Is there too much 3-point shooting in certain situations? Maybe. But I also don't want to overreact to what we're seeing in the game because the game goes through transitions. I think the game is incredible right now, day in, day out. I think some of the criticism is a bit unfair, and that goes back to my earlier point that I think the league needs to do a better job teaching about the game so that there's real appreciation for what people are seeing out there. But and again, ratings are fine. We have enormous global interest. People like what they're seeing right now on the floor. So I don't necessarily buy into the premise that it'll be a better game if you eliminated 3-point shooting.
How about we make the floor like a pinball machine where the 3-point line lights up, and when it lights up, then you're able to take threes. Like you could really dress up the floor. You guys did a pretty good job of the in-season, but why don't we make it pinball-like?
I don't know if you remember, but last year at All-Star, on All-Star Saturday night, we had literally a lit court.
Yeah.
And we played with things like that. I mean, I have one foot in sort of the traditionalist camp, and I really do care about the game, and I think it's so special that I think when you move to that place where it seems too gimmicky, and I think what baseball did, they found a right down the middle path where they preserved what's so great about that game, but found some ways to speed it up. I think have been very effective. So we're open here. We talk a lot about potential change to the game. I would just add back to some notion of a 40-point of a 40-minute game. I mean, because this game is so global, one of the things we'd like to see over time is creating a more consistent set of rules globally around the game. Like, again, the Olympic basketball, I'm sure you watched, on NBC and Peacock, the U.S. Serbia, U.S. France. Those are, people who are basketball fans, some are saying those are two of the best games they ever saw. Incidentally, if you went to a 40-minute game with the issues around load management and resting, it would be the equivalent of, I don't know the exact math, taking like 15 games off the season.
I like that.
So, and I don't think most fans would be disappointed if it was a 2-hour presentation instead of our game is actually about 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Well, you're going to find out the reaction the rest of the day as this gets posted that you're considering 10-minute quarters. I got to go.
Well, I didn't fully say, you asked me for some ideas. It's not quite at that level.
I'm not saying there's a vote this week, Commissioner. I'm just saying social media will look at this and go, hey, that sounds great. Now we got guys playing more. Maybe the games are more intense, and it's 40-minute games, and it's great for TV, great for everybody. For another day. I have to go.
Muriel's in Jackson Square in New Orleans.
Okay.
Muriel's. I'm not sure, in all due respect to your caller, I'd go to New Orleans for sushi.
Can I drop your name at Muriel's?
I'm not sure it'll be helpful, but absolutely.
Do you have an open tab at that restaurant?
I will if you go.
Okay. Awesome. But I'm not going alone. I'm bringing my whole team here.
Danettes.
Yes, the Danettes are going with me.
Long-time listener.
Hey, great to catch up with you again. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yep, bye-bye.
That's Commissioner Adam Silver. We'll take a break. Back after this.